Hello, I am Marina Eglevsky, and have been asked by Mr. Sergei Danilian to stage Glinka Trois of Mr. George Balanchine's for this wonderful reflections project with the Bolshoi dancers. One of the things of Glinka Trois is that Mr. Balanchine loved Glinka music. And I think he chose one of the most beautiful pieces of Glinka. And originally it was decided to be done for my father. He brought my father to the United States. One of the very interesting things I found out about, actually, I didn't hear this in growing up, actually, but I found out through reading Lincoln Kirstein's work, is that Kirstein said that Mr. Balanchine said that he saw my father in Europe and he loved his port-de-bras, and he asked he asked my father to come to the United States to join his company because he wanted everyone to study his port-de-bras, including the women. And and Mr. Balanchine was mostly focused with women, but this was just a wonderful story to hear. My father had really, really long arms, and his hands reached below his knees. And when even before Balanchine, when he danced, he raised his fingers up just to shorten his arms. And Mr. Balanchine loved that, so everybody had to do that with the slightly raised fingers, which became what they call now Balanchine style. I mean, Balanchine never had style. He had really just ideas. And now we call it Balanchine style. But for him, it was no style, just an idea that he loved the little upward line of the arm, like how an airplane flies. It has that little, the tip goes up, that kind of look. But yes, Mr. Balanchine loved women, and he himself came to this country because one of the reasons is he just wanted to be closer to Hollywood, and he adored the women in Hollywood, and he wanted to work with American dancers and Hollywood stars. And he would wear even cowboy outfits, with the little tie, and he loved also cowboys and Hollywood women. And his mentor, and he said this always, his mentor was Fred Astaire. And what's beautiful about Glinka is that he wanted to have his roots in this piece, which is the Petit Pas, the Mariinsky Theater, his training in St. Petersburg, and he wanted to put in also his experimental work and his ideas, the contemporary. So this piece in particular is a blend of the two, which I think is really wonderful in having this here with the Bolshoi dancers. They represent the Russian, and of course, and then they're doing the Balanchine. And also what I love here working with the dancers is that they are young, and as I think as they're getting younger, they're getting more eager to experiment. So it's this piece, I think, is very, very good for them, and very interesting working with them on it. Another thing about Mr. Balanchine and women, he saw women like horses. To him, they were horses, and he of course, cowboys had to have horses, and but he loved horses, and horses and cats, and he had in his studio women as horses, and in his home he had cats, and he loved to see groups of women move, and it reminded him of wild horses. He had this vision of wild horses moving. So in Glinka, he has a lot of movement in Glinka. It's there's only one bow in the whole ballet, and that's for the man. For my father, he gave my father star roles, but the women he liked to be like this idea of wild horses moving, and so he has in the pas de trois. His women moving and moving and moving. Some move slow and some move fast, but it's very continuous.
Have you been in Orange County before?
Yes, I came here to see John Neumeier's company. I came once to see John Neumeier's company because I worked with John Neumeier in Hamburg. I was in the company in Hamburg, and I knew John Neumeier since I've been 15 years old. We've had a very close, wonderful relationship. So I came to see him here, and I was completely impressed by these theaters and this complex. It's wonderful. One thing about Mr. Balanchine's genius is, and he's unequivocally a genius, is that he, well, it's always a choice of music, how a choreographer uses music, and his choices were so incredible, all of them. And then his music, you can speak the steps by words, the steps, exactly to the music, or vice versa. The music will speak in words his steps. It's like perfect, like as if you were creating a song to the music, and the song is the steps, and it goes perfectly with the music. And I think that that's a great part of his genius.
What do you think about the Russian dancers who going to dance Mr. Balanchine Pa?
These dancers. Well, I'm very eager to work with them. I just started, but I'm very eager because they're so young, and they seem to be very eager to learn new things now, and different styles, including Balanchine and contemporary, and they're trained so well. So I think they're getting now more open to use this training and use their bodies, um, to really experiment and really delve into these different styles that they haven't had before. Balanchine is very different than Petipa. I remember when I was in Moscow, and I was the first time, and I was staging Sylvia Pas de Deux, Balanchine Sylvia Pas de Deux, and Titskarice was in there in the studio with Yechiv and Maximova, and they got into a huge argument about whether the foot comes down flat or it comes down on you only step half toe piqué, or flat piqué, and this huge argument came because well, some of them said, I think Maximova said flat, and Fedejev and Titskarice said no, half toe, but in with but and I was just sitting there quietly listening. What with Balanchine, the half toe is less to go down. So for him, he wanted speed. He wanted dancers to go fast. His changes in his work was speed to go faster, and lines to be longer. And so for him, the idea, it takes more time to get the foot all the way flat than if you step on a half toe. That's half the time. So you can go faster. So his work and the dancers became used to only like doing half toe. So the argument was solved whether you're doing petit pas, it would be flat, and or Balanchine, it would be half toe. It was kind of an interesting conversation or argument they were having.
What memory from your childhood comes back and haunt you even today? And next question will be about what memory from your childhood gives you a sense of harmony, peace.
Oh, okay. Haunting. I have to say, my from my earliest memories, I didn't know who I was because my parents were so Russian, and we were then living in New York. When when I was born, my parents had come to Europe. They were in Europe, and I and they didn't speak much about their past, but they wanted to have a family, and they wanted to have us be as happy as possible and as normal as possible. Um, and so they built, like in the suburbs of Long Island, they built a house. Instead of living, my father was working with New York City Ballet when I was born in New York, Well, 2 years after I was born, he was in New York, and at first he was in Europe. But so 2 years later, he built a house in the suburbs of Long Island so that we could grow up like regular American children. But life wasn't like that, and that's haunting for me because, I mean, I was always in the theater, backstage. My life growing up was the theater, which is kind of not what a child. It's not kindergarten, and I hardly did any school. I was backstage, or I had these wonderful opportunities to watch from the front on occasion, and I think the haunting part is that it wasn't really a childhood. What it was, what they wanted, but it wasn't really a childhood. And then I was 7 days a week once I started in the studio. I started taking class with Mr. Balanchine in the theater, and all the company would take class like normally you do, and I ran in. I had point shoes, and I ran in and grabbed the bar, and I was in class every day.
Can you reach the bar?
I was like this. And Mr. Balanchine would correct me. He was pleased I was there. And then when I watched all the rehearsals, and I knew all the repertoire, and when the stage or the studios were free, I was in there dancing them all. And I did that for years until I started. The next stage was Nutcrackers, which we used to do Nutcracker from September. We started rehearsing, and we rehearsed, and the performances ended in end of February. So it was a whole chunk of your life each year that was just that in the company. You were like a company member. And then my parents started a school, and then the two companies, they had professional and children, and 7 days a week I'm in the studio or performing. And I think I never had a childhood with that, which I look now at the Russian dancers and I know that they haven't either. So it's haunting. I think of, that's very much like me, but my circumstances were different. And the difference also of feeling that you're Russian, but you're in America, and you're not American, and you're not Russian, is also kind of haunting. You're kind of caught in between. And the wonderful thing, I think, which saved me was my grandmother, because she was always home, and she was always doing the things of survival, like cooking, or she sewed costumes and cleaning and always there to take care of us. So she was the one thing that made me feel some sort of normalcy and wholeness, because even when you're as a child and you're backstage, you see the franticness, the intensity of this art form. I used to sit in my father's dressing room, and he would sweat so much before he was on stage, just from nerves, and the sweat would just pour down, and he's constantly wiping off his sweat and then putting new makeup on because it would wash away. And I would sit there and think, why? And then he'd get on stage when he should be sweating when he's on stage. And then he used to turn and turn and turn. Like I was telling the dancers, he could do, if he asked, this part is a lot of turns, he'd say, okay. And he would always do 15 turns. How many? He'd say, how many do you want? And they'd say, well, this is only enough for 8, or he'd do as many, and it's maybe 15. And he'd always do it, and the sweat would fly off, and it would catch the lights. And he would always have critics writing, there's like these jewels or these beads flying in the air. But it was from his nerves that as a child, I knew, that nobody knew that, is this normal? So, anyway.